Alright guys, now we're going to talk about 50-50 and some nightmare scenarios that can happen there and how to make sure that those things don't happen to us. We've talked about this a few times. Guys, outside positioning is always going to be better suited for forcing a connection between yourself and your opponent, okay? Pretty much across the board that's true, right? So just as an example, just to reiterate this concept, if Ryan's on his knees, an inside position based guard like butterfly guard, right? This is very good for keeping myself safe against Brian's potential counterattacks, but it's not good for forcing a connection to him, right? So if Brian wants to stand up and run away, it's a very easy thing for him to do that, right? For me to get my offense going in an inside positioning based guard, most of the time I'm expecting him to come after me, right? Which, you know, if he's a good grappler, he's probably going to be doing. But in MMA, when people are trying to avoid grappling with you at all costs, it doesn't always happen, okay? People are usually trying to just back away and get out of your guard, right? So for instance, something like a closed guard, which is outside positioning based, way harder to force this, right? But the downside to it is hypothetically, right, he could fall back for like a leg lock of his own, right? So that's the trade-off of outside positioning. There's a further trade-off of outside positioning in MMA, which is, you know, that when I force a connection to the guy, he also can punch me and I'm kind of stuck in the position. So what we want to make sure is that we have ways to remedy this. Okay, we're going to look at two main ways to remedy this. Let's first look at like what is the problem, right? So if I have Brian in a 50-50, let me go on this side. So now come up on here. Guys, if I'm here and I don't have a way to regulate the distance between his chest and my chest, okay, and Brian wants to punch away at me, I am right now keeping myself stuck in this position, right? Like if I open and I try to get out, you keep punching me. Like he has and he keeps coming forward on me. They're like, I am committing myself to this position. So this is a terrible place to be if I don't have good ways to regulate the distance between his chest and my chest. Sit down. Guys, even in a double-seated situation, there are many fights where you see one guy in a 50-50, he has a heel hook, and then the other guy is coming forward, I don't understand your butt, coming forward, even without height, and he's just like elbowing the guy in the face, punching him, all sorts of terrible things. And the guy with the heel hook doesn't get the finish here. And then the guy attacking the heel hook gets finished like with strikes, right? So we want to make sure we have ways to keep that from happening. So the first way we're going to look at is, come up to the side. If we're in a situation where the guy's over us, okay, the main way I recommend regulating the distance between your chest and his chest is with spin under movements. Okay, so when I'm here, what I want to do as much as possible is I'm going to hold this knee here, put my foot on his stomach, and I'm going to spin underneath to come to a backside 50-50 to expose the heel. Okay, so let's break that down. So this is just 50-50. This is an example, guys, of the concept of a misdirection, right? Where we're using, I'm going behind him, I'm putting pressure to the back of his knee to expose his heel, okay? And I'm misdirecting where his upper body is in relation to my upper body. So he comes up. Okay, the first thing you want to do, guys, here is I want to take my left hand and grab the knee. The reason why I'm doing that is I just don't want him to be able to pull the knee out as I do this, and then you've lost your connection. Okay? So I'm going to grab the knee. Now, I also want to hide my heel initially. Okay? Now, in MMA, most of the time, the guy's going to be focused on punching you rather than going for a counter heel hook. But it's still a possibility, right? So at first I want to be hiding my heel, right, whenever I open up my legs. Now I'm going to take this hand, and I'm going to go underneath the hamstring of the secondary leg. Now I take this foot, I'm going to go to the inside of the bicep to push so I can pull this out safely without the threat of the heel hook, right? If I just go like this, again, there's the potential for a counter heel hook, okay? Now guys, if you're going against a guy who's like madly punching you in the face and you're here, you could probably just do this sometimes, but to be as safe as possible, you'd want to do this, okay? So I'm here, I push here, and I put this on his foot. Now from here, I'm going to take this leg, I kick, and my goal is to get my right foot to the front of his, his left hip. And now look, this hand, guys, I'm holding the top of his knee and his thigh. I spin all the way through to a backside 50-50. Now there's tremendous pressure to the back of his knee, and I can expose his heel. And guys, guess what? His chest is completely faced away from me. So now when he goes to punch me, obviously he's totally ineffective. Even if he could somehow reach me, that's not a real strike. You know what I mean? He's not going to do any real damage with that. Right? From here, he's either going to roll or he's going to backstep. Let's say if he rolls. We roll, we throw our legs into an outside Senkaku, and we get our finish, all right? Now, let's look at that one more time. Let's go from this angle. So guys, if I just sit right here, even if I hypothetically had heel explosion, this is actually pretty hard to finish, right? So if Brian's driving into me, he's punching me, like this is actually hard to finish. Yeah, we've seen many times there are people who've gotten finished from the bottom position there, okay? So what you wanna do again is, I grab the knee, I go underneath here, I start with hiding my heel, then I put my foot here. All right, now I put my foot on his stomach, I kick this leg, see how I gain momentum with this? And my head is going underneath and behind the man, right? My right hand gripping underneath the secondary leg hamstring is greatly facilitating this as well, all right? So I'm spinning, and then here, again, I'm still holding onto that knee so you can't pull it out, and then I expose the heel, all right? That's the best way to keep the man from punching you when the guy's standing over you. However, if you're both seated, that's not gonna be an option anymore, okay? So, yeah, I'll come down over here. So if you're both seated, you're not going to be able to spin under the guy because there's not enough space behind his knee, right? I've talked about this on other instructionals. One of the main defensive reactions you're going to see when you start attacking leg locks consistently against people that are standing over you is they're going to sit down. What they're doing when they do this is they're limiting the amount of space behind the back of their knee, so it's more difficult for you to put pressure to the back of it, okay, and therefore expose the heel in a standing situation. The additional factor or feature in MMA is that if you can't put pressure to the back of the knee, you're not going to be able to misdirect them in the same way. All right? So we have to have another way to be able to mitigate his ability to come forward and strike me. Because I'm going to break down some matches where you see this actually. You might be surprised, but I'm telling you guys, there have been fights where even a guy who's seated like this has been able to TKO the guy going for the leg lock. Okay? So you really can have a lot of damage done to you here. All right, so what we want to do instead is the main thing we want to focus on, and this is just good 50-50 offense generally speaking. Okay, so it works out that way. What we want to do is we want to get our legs in front of the guy. Okay, so now let's just say I have the heel. So now when he comes forward to punch me, I've got my legs in his way. Okay, and it doesn't have to be like a strict outside Senkaku. Could be like here, could be like here, could just be your foot, and then maybe this leg is maybe it's like this, right? The main thing is just getting your legs in between you and him. So when you're here, when you expose the guy's heel, there are a lot of different ways to do this. Like one good way is, let's do it this way. One good way to get your legs to the other side is, what you can do is, cross your legs for me. Take your right hand, go underneath, grab the knee of the secondary leg, and you hide the heel of your primary leg, and you hold the knee of his primary leg. So see how I'm grabbing both knees? Now here, now I'm gonna take my left leg, I push in his bicep, I put this leg on top of his shoulder. Now what I do is I put it on his other shoulder, and now I suck my knee back. Okay. By taking it over his shoulders first, when I make that motion to put my foot on his stomach, I never expose myself to an obvious heel hook counter, right? Like if I'm here and I just suck it back, maybe you get it, or maybe he catches the heel hook right there. Right? A smarter way to do it is like this, where you push, I go here. Okay, now look, this foot goes on the floor, I shift my hips, I go on his other shoulder, and then I put my foot on his stomach. Okay? Now, we're gonna look to expose the heel. All right, now, I'm not gonna go over exposing the heel at length here, because this instructional has its own section on that, okay? In MMA, it's a lot easier to expose someone's heel in a double-seated situation than it is in grappling, specifically because of the fact that we have a cage. We have a cage wall that we can use to our advantage. I'm going to talk about that later on. But for now, just keep in mind this idea that if you're in a double-seated situation and you're looking for heel hooks in a 50-50, or really any outside positioning-based guard, this would also hold true for an outside ashi as well. You really want to make sure your legs are in between you and them so you can regulate the distance between his chest and your chest so he can't strike you indefinitely and hit you, okay? That's always an important consideration when we're working for leg locks in MMA.